And salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet, coming to you live from the Stream.tv studios here in Hollywood, California. We are so glad you decided to make us part of your day, and today is a pretty damn special day. I'm not going to lie to you. I am excited about today because today, the first part of the show is a little bit different. We're not going to cover a lot of movie news topics today. Dennis is going to come in here in a second. We're going to talk about a few issues, including some Captain America issues. But right now, for the first part of the show, we are thrilled to be joined by the Winter Soldier himself from the new Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Sebastian Stan. Sebastian, thank you so much for coming in today, man.
Thanks for having me.
I went to go see, well, you and I were both at the premiere last night.
Right.
Such a good time.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, pretty intense experience.
And you were telling me a little bit earlier that that was actually the first time you watched it on a theater screen, was last night.
Yeah, right there with my family, my friends, and everybody else. It was a pretty special time.
All right, now I got a few questions for you. I got to start with this. Full disclosure.
Right.
I saw the trailers for Captain America: The Winter Soldier, thought they looked good. I thought the movie was going to be good. But I didn't think much beyond that for a while. And, you know, Kevin Feige was in here earlier this week, sitting in that chair, and we talked for about an hour. And I asked him about a lot of Marvel films, but I didn't even think to ask him about Captain America: The Winter Soldier, because it's a Marvel film, it's going to be good, trailer looks good. Me and a bunch of people went to go see a press screening earlier this week, and I think it was me, Roth from IGN, Steve from Collider, a bunch of guys from Coming Soon, Eric from Cinema Blend. We all walked out of the theater together, and we stood dumbfounded in the foyer, and we just looked at each other and like, what did we just see? It's the best movie of the year so far. And I thought it would be at least until November that I would say something beat out the Lego Movie for me, which I love so much.
Oh, God, yeah.
But this is, to me, the best movie of the year so far. I was floored by it. We'll go into more of that later. But as you're shooting this film, at what point, whether it's in the script reading, halfway through filming, or right up until last night, did you realize this movie was going to be something pretty special?
Well, it's hard to think about it that way. You know, when you're shooting it, when you're involved, when you're so concerned. I mean, at the time we were showing up and we were just trying to get the fight sequences right. It was just sort of like take it a day at a time approach. And so a thought like that is always in the back of your head, but you're never really kind of thinking, God, we got to deliver or something, you know, which it is in the back of your head, essentially. But listen, for me, I always explain it like it's kind of being inducted into a sort of like a private club, you know, this membership of great actors, and I feel like, you know, the team at Marvel has done such a great job with these movies that you sort of feel like, okay, we are going to do something great. We are going to do something special. The potential is always there. And I feel like that kind of feeds your confidence in terms of how you approach your work.
It goes without saying, you were awesome in this film.
Thank you.
And I read this interesting story that I didn't realize until just the other day. Marvel is developing this really weird habit of screen testing guys for one role and then making them iconic in others. We saw that happen with Tom Hiddleston with Loki. You actually went in and screen tested for Captain America originally.
Correct.
And now you're Winter Soldier. How did that all come about?
I mean, it was just one of those day-to-day processes. I mean, I went in, I think I went in probably about 3 or 4 times. Didn't work out. I was really bummed at the time. And then a couple of days later, I got this phone call. Listen, come in, let's discuss this role. I mean, for me, because my background in Europe, I'd never grown up with the comic books. So I actually, when I was auditioning for Steve Rogers, I never read any of the comic books, and I didn't want to because I thought, actually, it's better if I just walk in with a clean slate. And so, that being said, I didn't know anything about Bucky Barnes whatsoever. So when I sat down with these guys and they're actually telling me the story and where the character goes, I was like, wow, this is, I might have gotten, you know, pretty lucky in this situation, actually. So.
Now, one of the neat things whenever you see a Marvel film, a big action piece kind of film, you expect this big build-up that the audience has to wait for the bad guy to fight the hero. And it doesn't give much away to say this because you've probably seen there are different shots in the trailer, so this isn't really a spoiler. You and Captain America have multiple fights in this
Right.
film. And I can say this unequivocally, the best fight choreography in any Marvel film we've ever seen. Like, it was just amazing. It wasn't just, I kind of expect that because of George St. Pierre, but then when it
Right,
came
if
down to
he's
this,
in it for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, God.
but then it's we see Winter Soldier fighting Cap multiple times through the film, and the fight choreography is always just insane. Talk a little bit about the experience shooting those scenes.
Well, it's funny that you bring up George St. Pierre, right? Because we know him by his amazing fighting skills, but actually also George St. Pierre had to sort of like learn this new way of fighting because he's used to, real fighting.
Real fighting,
And
yeah.
movie fighting is going to be very different. It's actually really exaggerated. It's sort of choreographed. You have to have enough distance between each other with the camera angles and everything. And so even for him being who he is, it was kind of a new experience. So taking that knowledge, imagine how it was for me and well, particularly, and I imagine for Chris. But we spent about 3 months really practicing, and we had these stunt guys that were just unbelievable. I mean, they, that saying sort of, I look at this guy and he could probably kill anybody out there. I mean, that was very valid for these guys that were training us. I mean, they were so skilled. So, and also the Russos wanted to do a sort of a different take on sort of what we knew about Captain America from before, and to kind of really show his skills and what really defines him as a superhero per se, and I felt like they, so all that kind of came together.
Yeah, kind of going back to when you first got the role, when Marvel first started talking to you about Bucky, did they give you any kind of thought or idea that they had future plans for the character that they may go? At what point did you find out that, oh, I'm going to be in the next film too?
I actually found out 2 years after the first movie.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it was 2 years later. I didn't really know. Obviously, I was familiar with the storyline, and they educated me on it when we first sat down. But I had no idea what time, and I still don't. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm fine. But yeah, you never really know. It's I always tell people, for me, it's very similar to actually the Winter Soldier. I just sort of get that phone call, and then a time and a place, and I show up. So.
Now, we're going to take a couple of questions. We asked you guys to send in questions for Sebastian, both on Twitter and on our Facebook, and we're going to get to those in just a second. But one more question for you, Sebastian. About one of the things that I loved about Captain America: The Winter Soldier is that this is the most human, and I don't mean human versus alien, but this is the most human movie Marvel has made so far. We see a lot more into the emotional depth and background of Captain America. We got a lot into the motivation and the background of Falcon, and the movie delves a lot, even though at some points you feel, just give us a bad guy and fight. No, Russo's went out of the way, and you went out of your way to give us the reason why there's actual motivation, emotional depth with Winter Soldier. Talk about that experience. Was that something you guys knew when you were making the movie right from the beginning, that these characters are going to have more emotional depth than they've ever had? Or is that just kind of something that evolved as the movie making process went along?
Well, I think it always starts with the script. We had a really good script, and we got to give credit to the screenwriters. I mean, they just on the page, it's certainly, when you were sort of flipping the pages and you're reading, you kind of were going back. At least I was going back and going, did that really just happen? Did I just really read that? You could tell right off the bat that it was a smart movie, and sometimes it's tough to know that or to see that when you're shooting it, but in this circumstance, there was always a positive attitude on set. I don't know. The fact of just having Robert Redford there also kind of elevated it to a different level, especially because you knew. The Russos, I think, wanted to pay an homage to sort of the 70s thrillers and those great sort of spy movies from the 70s, and some of which he was in. So, yeah, the momentum just kind of kept building up.
I told a lot of my friends that the first two acts of this film feel a lot like a Tom Clancy movie to me. It's like
exactly.
So
yeah.
great and so intense. All right, we got a couple of questions from you guys lined up that we're going to ask. Chris Lee's got them in front of her. So, Chris Lee, what do we got?
Rebel Babushka at Peter Quills asks, both Winter Soldier and Black Widow have Russian ties. What kind of connection do they have in the movie?
Without giving much away.
That's
always the challenge.
Without spoilers.
I would say this is, well, for the Winter Soldier, for one thing, this is very much a introductory film. in terms of really introducing the character. And so in that sense, we're just kind of just scratching the tip of the iceberg there in terms of their ties per se. But there are definitely some points that are very recognizable if you've read the comic books.
All right, what's next?
Kevin Perez is asking on Facebook, how was the metal arm prop? Was it heavy and uncomfortable?
Well, we had, okay, so there were about there were about 3 or 4 arms, and there was one arm that was like the hero arm, which is the one that was made out of this specific that looked like the most metal sort of looking, and it was also the one that was the least flexible. And they kept telling me that, and I was like, I gotta wear that one. I gotta wear the main hero arm. I don't care how inflexible it is or whatever. I gotta have it. But it was a challenge because the fight sequences were just so dramatic, and a lot of the arms got torn up a lot in the end. But they kind of helped me out, and they sort of fed me in terms of how I wanted to approach the character. So it was a good thing.
All right, let's take one more.
This one's from Twitter. Rashad H. asks, if you could pick any other Marvel superhero for the Winter Soldier to fight, who would it be and why?
Ooh, I like that one.
That's a good one. That's a good one. For some reason, off the top of my head, I feel like he needs to fight Iron Man.
I was thinking the exact same
Right?
thing, yeah.
It just makes sense for some reason. You just see that arm going straight to that helmet.
All right, well, Sebastian, we appreciate you coming in. I got one more question. I'm going to get you to put your salesman hat on for a second.
All right.
Why are AMC audiences going to love Captain America: The Winter Soldier?
I just, we were talking about this before. I feel like there's so many ingredients to this film. You come to it sort of expecting one thing, but I feel like you're going to walk away essentially getting all this other stuff that you weren't expecting, kind of walking into the movie. It's a really smart script. You got to listen. You got to pay attention. There's a lot of information. There's great action sequences. It's one of the darker movies from Marvel, and it's very relatable to a lot of issues that are going on in our world today in 2014. And it's just all these characters that you grew up with are kind of revamped in a way. So
Well,
it's cool.
Sebastian, congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
It is my favorite film of the year so far. Blew every expectation I had out of the wire. You're
great.
a magnificent new addition to the Marvel lineup, and we cannot wait to have this movie on AMC screens. Thanks a
All
lot
right,
for
thank
coming
you,
in,
man.
man.
Thanks
And
for
listen,
having me.
guys, we're going to be back in just a second.